Let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We're eager to see how far these neighborhood disputes resonate, whether you're in a quiet small town or a bustling city. Share your own local tales. We'd love to hear them. I cherish that tree more than some of my own kin. It was a 25-foot maple, aged yet vigorous, planted decades ago by my home's first owner near the front yard's edge. In spring, it burst into bloom like a masterpiece on canvas. In fall, its fiery orange leaves stopped joggers in their tracks. It shaded my porch, scattered leaves like festive confetti, and stood tall long before Susan Reynolds moved in across the street. Susan, however, had an opinion on everything. She claimed the tree obstructed her sunrise view, though it didn't, and grumbled that its leaves littered her lawn, as if nature owed her a consultation. I never imagined her complaints would escalate beyond petty remarks. That is, until one morning when I returned from work to a horrifying sight. My magnificent maple was gone. Not trimmed, not pruned, obliterated. All that remained was a jagged stump, a heap of sawdust, and tire tracks from a landscaping truck that had just departed. I stood frozen, heart pounding, as a piece of my property and my life vanished without notice. My neighbor, Mr. Thompson, approached with a grim nod. You see it too, huh? I tried to stop her, he said. Her who? I asked, already suspecting. Susan. She called it a visual nuisance and a threat to neighborhood uniformity. Rage surged within me. I marched across the street, rang her bell, and waited, fist clenched. Susan answered, clad in a pastel sweater, cradling tea as if preparing to scold a child. Oh, hello, she said with a feigned smile. Did you finally get rid of that thing? You had it removed? I asked, incredulous. Yes, she replied with a shrug. It was ruining the neighborhood's aesthetic. That tree was on my property, I countered, voice steady despite my fury. She rolled her eyes. You're welcome. That was when I realized this wasn't just Susan being difficult, it was an act of war. She had no idea I was armed with resolve. I didn't storm back home. I marched with purpose. Anger fuels chaos, but purpose drives action. After Susan casually confessed to trespassing and destroying my tree as if it were a favor, I began gathering evidence. I recorded the stump, the sawdust, and the tire marks, proof of a professional job, not an accident. Then I captured her admission on video. Did you hire someone to cut down my tree? Yes, she said. And you should thank me. Oh, I'd thank Harrencourt. I filed a police report for property destruction. The officer surveyed the stump and remarked, she did this without your consent? I've got her on video admitting it, I replied. That's criminal mischief, he said, possibly a felony, depending on the tree's value. Value, that was the key. Mature trees carry significant worth under state law, recoverable in court when removed without permission. I summoned an arborist the next day. He assessed the damage and estimated a replacement value of $9,000, plus labor potentially more in litigation. Susan had committed a costly crime while sipping tea across the street. I'll believe why us. The neighborhood buzzed. Mrs. Harper saw Susan directing the landscaper the day prior. Mr. Thompson provided a witness statement. A teen down the block shared a blurry video of the truck on my lawn. Susan's covert act became a local scandal. Instead of apologizing, she left a note in my mailbox. You're welcome. Maybe plant something smaller next time, with a Dulov 5 hardware store gift card attached. I kept it as evidence. I wasn't seeking an apology, I was preparing a Dulov 12,000 landscaping bill, to be enforced by a judge if she refused. Susan didn't flinch when served papers. She posted a melodramatic plea on the neighborhood Facebook group. I'm under legal attack by a hostile neighbor over a tree. Send prayers. Comments were disabled swiftly. Then she dropped a counter invoice in my mailbox for Dulot 2000 in emotional distress, suggesting we call it even. My lawyer and I laughed before adding it to our evidence. She boasted of hiring counsel her brother-in-law, DVYD, whose legal expertise stemmed from courtroom TV shows. In court, DVYD strutted in with a gleaming briefcase, only to admit he wasn't licensed. The judge dismissed him, leaving Susan to fend for herself. Her defense crumbled. She claimed aesthetic authority as an HOA veteran, but the judge countered, what gave you the right to alter another's property? She whined about leaves and a ruined VYEW. That's nature, the judge replied dryly. Her claim of a diseased tree was debunked by my arborist's report, and her VYDO confession sealed her fate. You'll pay due lot 12,428.67 in damages, the judge ruled. Susan gasped. I thanked the court and left, victorious. She had 30 days to pay or face wage garnishment. On day 5, she sent a due law 400 check, calling it generous. We rejected it. On day 12, she offered due law 2,000 and old patio furniture declined. On day 20, she proposed due law 100 monthly payments for a decade. The judge refused. By day 27, she paid due law 5,000 via money order, no apology included. On day 29, she delivered the remaining due law 7,428.67 in 3 cashier's checks, dropped off at dawn. Her yard soon showed neglect. Gnome sold. Birdbath downgrade. She liquidated assets to pay. I used part of the funds for Maple 2.0, a taller, redder replacement, complete with irrigation and a spotlight. Susan complained about the light. The city inspector dismissed her. The tree thrived, a glowing rebuke. I added a sign, in memory of the maple destroyed without permission, replanted by justice. Neighbors adored it. Susan's blinds stayed shut. The HOA added the Reynolds Amendment, mandating permission for tree removals, and awarded me a certificate for community contribution. Maple 2.0 became a neighborhood icon. Kids played beneath it. Couples photographed it. Susan tried a unity brunch to rebrand, but rain and ridicule sank it. Her influence faded. The block flourished without her. On Arbor Day, we planted more trees, including a sapling near Susan's yard labeled Property of the People. Do not remove. It grew, as did our community rooted in justice, thriving beyond her reach. I sit under Maple 2.0 some nights, drink in hand, watching it sway. Susan remains a cautionary tale, her reign reduced to a stump, while our neighborhood blooms anew.